Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Sharmeen Ali. In India at the moment, we're seeing massive protests in this northeastern states, particularly in Assam, due to the recent citizenship amendment bill. And we're also seeing in the last couple of years under the BJP regime, which is the extremist fascist regime led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that increasingly minorities in India are getting more and more marginalized, and they're getting more and more discriminated against and being treated literally like second-class citizens. And the human rights situation for minorities in India is becoming very grave. We're going to be talking about that in our program today. Also, in Indian-occupied Kashmir, which is the communications lockdown has now entered its 5th month, and after August 5th, the revocation of Article 370 and 35A, there was an entire communications lockdown and an internet blackout and arbitrary detentions being made and torture and protests and people being shot at by pellet guns. We've seen all of that happening. The Indian government did partially resume communication services by allowing landline services and some postpaid services, and now they've also resumed the incoming SMS services into people's telephones, mobile phones. Now, that is limiting in itself. However, incoming text messages are useful for banking purposes and for other purposes, and text messaging is widely used in Indian-occupied Kashmir for many purposes such as online purchasing and financial transactions. We'll be talking about that in today's program. And the other good thing that we have going on right now in Pakistan is that Test cricket has returned to Pakistan, which shows that Pakistan is winning its war against terror. Previously, after the incident in 2009 with the Sri Lankan cricket team, Test cricket had been suspended in Pakistan, but now we're seeing that it's back in a fulsome manner, and the matches are going on at the moment. And it's very good news indeed, because Pakistan's armed forces and paramilitary and security forces have really worked hard to rid the country of its terrorist elements, and that situation has improved a lot. So now we're going to speak about our first story, which is the communications blackout in India. First, we're going to show you this report, and then we'll speak to our guests about that.
Despite repeatedly assuring that bill passed by Lok Sabha isn't anti-Muslim, Narendra Modi-led Hindu extremist BJP just cannot evade the contradictions in what its parliamentarians say and what the bill states. India's lower house of the parliament passed the Citizenship Amendment Bill, which clearly aims to naturalize the refugees of all religions, except Muslims. The bill will now go to Rajya Sabha, the upper house of Indian Parliament. The amendment bill proposes granting the ability to apply for nationality to Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Christians, Jains and Parsis even without any documentation. The new amendment entirely excludes Muslims for applying for citizenship. Asaduddin Owaisi, a parliamentarian from Hyderabad, expressed his disgust over the proposed amendment. He was left with more questions than answers after he tore the copy of the bill.
ये कानून तो हिटलर के कानून से बदतर है। आपकी वजह से पॉलिटिकल मार्जिनेशन हो गया मुसलमानों का। आप सब उनको दबा रहे हैं। उनके सीने पर पैर रखकर आप कह रहे हैं कि अब तू इस मुल्क का बाइज़ शहरी नहीं बल्कि तो स्टेटलेस बनाया जाएगा।
The move by Hindu extremist BJP and its allies has left the Muslims terrified, even those who are not migrants. Muslims who have been living in India for generations are feeling aliens because many of them say they were not issued birth certificates when they were born. The Citizenship Amendment Bill will seal their fate too. The proposed amendment is discriminatory to say the least. It targets the Muslims of India in what can be termed as the most humiliating and outrageous manner. Driven by a toxic mix of an extremist Hindutva ideology, the nationwide count of citizens is a step closer to making India a Hindu state by marginalizing Muslims. This is Ali Andaz reporting for PTV World.
So you could see that there are protests going on in northeastern India, and particularly in the state of Assam, where 5,000 paramilitary troops have been sent. We've got online with us Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, who's the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Kasuri.
Thank you. Yes.
Sir, your comments, please, regarding the Citizenship Amendment Bill in India. We're seeing that there are protests going on in northeast India, and they've had to send 2 army columns to that region and also 5,000 extra paramilitary troops. So there's growing unrest there due to this bill, and the state of the overall Muslim minority in India has just become appalling. Your comments on this, sir?
Well, I mean, what you are telling me about rioting, this is the smaller part of the whole story. This is a very, very dangerous development that's taken place in India. Protests which they break out can even be momentarily suppressed by force as they are trying to do. But what has really happened through this particular legislation is they're trying to change the fundamental character of the Indian Constitution. The founders of the Indian Republic, of the Constitution, had assumed that India was a society of multifarious groups of people with different religions, cultures, uh, languages, and therefore they needed to have a pluralistic society. Unless they had a pluralist society, they realized the country was very difficult to keep together. What Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah have done is really to question the basic fundamentals of the Constitution of India. And the price is going to be therefore much larger. They started with Article 370 in Kashmir, and now you can see the whole picture very, very clearly as the brainchild of the extremacy, even in the Hindutva. And they don't realize what they're trying to do. We went through not a similar process in Pakistan, but when you have marginalization of this nature, extremism is the result. At a period when General Ziaul Haq was here, certain decisions were taken which the Pakistan government and the Pakistan army have reversed now. Now,
Right.
but this, what they are trying to do is of a even more fundamental character and much more dangerous, because they really, it's not simply that the people in Assam are protesting because they are afraid that the basic composition, the ethnic composition of Assam will change. Whether it is Hindus or Muslims, they are less bothered about it. They are bothered about the Assamese character of their area. But what I was trying to tell you is that this has affected the whole of India, and history will record that the damage this has done is going to be long lasting. I can only hope that the governments which follow this, the current dispensation, and who are currently criticizing these opposition parties, will see the stupidity of this action and reverse it when they happen to come into power. Because BJP is, first of all, not likely to stay in power forever. And number two, I go even to the extent of saying that not all BJP are of the same type. I dealt with two governments, one BJP and one Congress government. The BJP government, led by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the character of the government and of the leader, Prime Minister Vajpayee, who could even be regarded as a statesman, was utterly different from the character of the current government in India. So what they're trying to do, and it's for very short-sighted purposes. The purpose is to win elections by trying to differentiate between the people, to polarize them along different lines, religious lines in particular. And India will have to pay very dearly for it. And of course, our heart goes out to the Muslims of India, who are the primary target of all recent legislation that is being initiated by the BJP government.
Right. So now India has the largest Muslim minority in the world. 200 million Muslims is a very large number. So what recourse do the Muslims in India have right now? Because it seems like the state instruments itself, they are supporting the BJP policies. So what recourse do the Muslims in India have to all of these increasingly hostile decisions that are being taken by the parliament and by the courts recently, as we saw with the Babri mosque verdict? What recourse do the Muslims in India have?
You see, the Muslims in India, I don't want to draw parallels, but you do recollect that when they were rioting in Gujarat, when the current Prime Minister Modi was then Chief Minister of Gujarat, the rioting that took place at that time resulted in intercommunal intercommunal fighting, and you could see lots of people lost their lives. Largely, it's the Muslims who lost their lives. But as a reaction, some Muslims took matter in their own hands, and you saw what happened in Bombay. And as a result, a large number of Hindus were also killed. Now, if this continues, and I hope it doesn't, because India is our neighbor, but if it does happen, India will pay a very bitter price. Now you say what can happen. You read only the other day, all of us read, that that a government or a semi-government agency involved in human rights in the United States has demanded action against the government of India. It's only a matter of time. Now you saw what happened to Aung San Suu Kyi, who was, of course, as a Nobel Prize winner. She was a great heartthrob of a lot of people all over the world. But today, she faced the ignominy of the Gambian Minister for Defense hurling allegations against the government of which she is the political face. Now, if this can happen to them, it's a matter of time. I'm sure Muslims, beyond a certain stage, will, and they have so many overseas Muslims of Indian origin, they're going to all get together and they will be joined by others, and they'll then be joined by Muslims all over the world. So if India doesn't see the sense of it, it will pay a big price, and unfortunately our entire region will be destabilized.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Khurshid Kasuri. And now I'd like to introduce one of our guests to our program, Mr. Tariq Pirzada, who's a senior analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, sir, in our studios. Now, I'd like to add to what the former foreign minister was saying, that the state councillor or prime minister of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, she's now having to face the International Court of Justice regarding what has happened with the Rohingya Muslims. And a very unlikely country, Gambia, has brought this case forward to the International Court of Justice, and she might have to face even the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And you know, what are the chances that this sort of a case can be brought up by any country for India as well, so that they have to face what they're doing with the minorities in their country?
We are referring to India at the present time. So let me say very clearly with respect to Kashmir and with respect to the Muslims in India, there is a sense of being withdrawn from the political scene as far as the Muslim community of 200 million in India is concerned at the present time. What happened in Gujarat, that was very localized basically, and I hope that every single member of the community of Muslims in India had taken part at that time, and things would have been different. So the Muslims in India are not showing any aggressiveness at the present time. Even this dual citizenship, a disputed citizenship law that was passed yesterday, even that is not drawing massive reaction. There is some reaction. There are some minor protests here and there, but a large-scale uprising within India in the sense of strong reaction from Muslim community in particular, that is not happening at the present time. I tend to disagree with the former foreign minister on the point that India will have to pay a very heavy price. Today, for example, take the case of Kashmir. This is the end of the fourth month. This is the fourth month of the occupation of Kashmir and its incorporation into the Indian Union, not only as it was already physically incorporated, that now it is both incorporated based on the change in the legalities of the matter pertaining to Jammu and Kashmir, occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So because there is a problem, I'm not saying that we should go to war against India, but the reality is somebody has to respond to the letter of Sayyid Ali Gilani, who appealed to the government of Pakistan and to the state of Pakistan just a few weeks ago. He said very clearly, we need some practical support.
Right.
Okay. Similarly, the Indian Muslims in the rest of the India, they know that there is no reaction coming from the neighboring Muslim countries, particularly Pakistan. So I'm not criticizing my country, but what I'm trying to say is, after all, there is a way to encourage certain reaction. And if you do not do, then we're not very revolutionary people, basically. Remember the way we were created as a result of a peaceful political struggle.
Absolutely.
As an independent country, and which was a great credit to us.
Yes.
And this is what President Truman said when Liaquat Ali Khan went to United States. He said, this gentleman who is here, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he and his comrades created a country with the help of a peaceful democratic struggle. But the reality has changed on the ground, in subcontinent, in Middle East, and elsewhere in the world. Every single country is struggling at the present time that does not have either military power or economic power. So somebody has to manage the things in a way that not only the Muslims in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, that they get some financial support, some semi-military support, military support, some kind of and intelligence support. Unless this is exactly what Sayyid Ali Gilani asked, in his letter that was sent to the government of Pakistan. So the Muslims in India, they have to be very aggressive. Otherwise, there is no future for them. And saying that the majority of the India doesn't have a future, I think they have a future in the sense, and I'm not wishing it for them, because they are in majority. We are living in an age where people are killed by hundreds of thousands. Take the case, what happened in Iraq. So take the case of hundreds of thousands of people, more than 400,000 that have been killed in Syria. Take the case of Libya, Somalia. I mean, is there any country where hundreds of thousands of people are not dying? And I'm not forgetting my neighboring brotherly country, Afghanistan.
Right.
So unless and Palestinians, they should not be forgotten. So ma'am, all I'm trying to say is that this situation where we are hoping that there would be a massive reaction from within India, from the Muslim community. The Muslim community thinks that they are helpless, that there is no external support, that there is no internal, management that they have within their ranks, so that they can organize themselves up to the point where they can lead a major countrywide movement against New Delhi.
Absolutely.
Well, that's not happening. So the one thing that the BJP government is banking is that they have been able to subdue the Muslim majority of India. This is what they are thinking is, they may be wrong, but so far, as we say, let me put it this way. When this Kashmir issue happened, when India legally incorporated by changing their domestic laws, the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and practically, physically, it was already under their occupation. There was no massive reaction from within India either. There was no massive reaction from within the streets of Pakistan either. The government of Pakistan did take it to the United Nations, and that was a remarkable thing. And because no other prime minister had done that before, what Prime Minister Imran Khan has done. But since then, we are talking about it, but the practical steps that the Kashmiris are awaiting, and maybe the practical steps that the Indian Muslim community is waiting for.
Well, if we put it a bit in perspective, the situation of the Muslims in India at the moment, there are 27 Muslim MPs in the Lok Sabha out of 542. So that's a very small representation.
Very small representation.
None of them are from BJP.
Right.
And secondly, according to the Sacha report that was released during Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's time, the state of Muslims in India, even back then, was sometimes worse than other backward classes, and such as the scheduled classes or the other backward classes, OBCs in India.
Here is the answer to here is the explanation of this very critical point that you've just raised. Look, the Muslims are about between 14 to 18%. There's a slight variation of how you look at the population. They constitute 14 to 18% of the Indian population. However, the number of jobs that they have been allotted or they have at the present time is marginally more than 4%. One. Number two, the Muslims cannot at the present time, and we have relatives in India, by the way, they cannot sell their properties at market prices where Hindu majority areas are located, because this is how the culture, the local behavior of the Hindu majority population, this is how it is,
Right.
shaping
So,
up.
and if you look at the education level, 39% of Muslims from 15 to 24 years of age are still studying, compared to 59% of upper class Hindus. And then the ones completing graduation, it's 14% of Muslims compared to 37% of upper class Hindus. This is according to Christopher Jaffelot, who is a historian who researches South
I
Asia.
think this is a perfect, great data.
Yeah,
I mean,
and this is
it's-
2017 to 18
we're
figures.
talking about 2017, 18, very recent, fresh data. So look at that. So all I'm trying to say is the Muslims of India. Let me just get to another point. For example, take to our this Xinjiang region of China. It is a Chinese province, great province, and great Chinese government is running it. I'm very happy, and I've been there. But they constitute only 3% of the Chinese population. But this is how aggressive, practical approach pays off. They were able to convince the government of China that their language must be on Yuan, that their language has to be honored, that their region has to be autonomous. So they got all those things while they were only what? 3% of the total population. Here, the Muslims of India are about 18 or 16% of the Indian population. Urdu is a dead language in India at the present time. It doesn't have any official status. I wish it were a second national language or something like that. And I think they should have struggled for that.
And
But
the changing of the names of cities and the
and
historical
and the changing
perspective
of the names
Islam
of the
in
cities,
India.
the demolition of Babri Mosque.
Yeah,
I mean,
all
we
of
used to hear that somebody came from Afghanistan, Mahmoud Ghaznavi, and he destroyed Somnath. That was what, 1,000 years ago? Yes. Okay, I say, well, yeah, Hindus were mistreated. Well, what is happening today in front of our own eyes? And that is the demolition of Babri Mosque, which is neither 1,000-year-old a mosque, which was from the days of Emperor Babur, that the great, benefactor of the entire subcontinent, actually,
Right,
not only that of
exactly.
Muslims.
No, it's
So-
very unfortunate. But we're now going to talk about the situation in Indian occupied Kashmir. And now we've entered the communication lockdown. And since Article 370 and 35A were revoked on August 5th, now we're entering the 5th month of this communication lockdown. And also the internet blackout, how it affects the lives of the citizens there, how it affects their businesses, and how it affects their day-to-day life. We're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to show you a report based on Kashmir Media Service. So please watch this report. We'll be back.
In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops, in their unabated act of state terrorism, martyred 95,471 innocent Kashmiris, including 7,135 in custody since January 1989 till date. A report released by the research section of Kashmir Media Services revealed that these killings rendered 22,910 women widowed and 107,780 children orphaned. The report said that the troops molested or disgraced 11,175 women and damaged 109,451 residential houses and other structures. It maintained that Indian troops and police subjected at least 8,000 people to custodial disappearances in the period. The report revealed that thousands of young schoolboys and girls were also injured by the pellets fired by Indian troops, while dozens, including 19-month-old Hiba Jan, were blinded. The report said 38 Kashmiris, including 2 women and 3 young boys, were martyred, and of those 7 were killed in fake encounter or custody during the last 128 days of lockdown by Indian troops in the territory. During the ongoing lockdown, 859 people were critically injured due to use of brute force, firing of bullets, pellets and tear gas shells on peaceful demonstrators by Indian military, paramilitary and police personnel in the occupied territory. The troops molested, abused and disgraced 39 women after barging into the residential houses in the period. Life remains badly affected and economy of Kashmir adversely hurt due to lockdown, restrictions and internet gag imposed by the Indian authorities. Internet gag persists while prepaid mobile and text messaging services also remain in shutdown mode. Meanwhile, Hurriyat leaders in their separate statements have appealed to the United Nations and other human rights organizations to send their teams to take stock of the worst human rights situation in occupied Kashmir.
Yes, that's indeed a very disturbing situation, sir. As you saw in the report now, there have been 8,000 disappearances and people's homes are being raided, and the state of the women in the occupied valley is very dismal. We were discussing Christiana Manpour's interview recently with Rana Ayub and Dexter Filkins. That article that was written in the New Yorker
New
has
Yorker
gained a
magazine,
lot of
yeah.
attention. So
Correct.
your comments on that, sir?
Yeah. I have done another program on the same subject with reference to Rana Ayub and Dexter Filkins' article in New Yorker. And I tell you, that was a powerful show that they have been able to present yesterday on CNN, and everybody should watch it. It's on YouTube. So the gist of the matter is that both of them have been able to bring out the reality that is being concealed by the Indian media and number one, by the government, number two, and by other segments, by the military of India, number three. And they have been able to present this fact before the whole world. It was a prime time interview that happened yesterday, and they were able to tell that that the Muslims are being hunted down in different parts of India, not just in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is very interesting. This is what Dexter Filkins pointed out. Number two, that the Kashmir itself, the entire body of Indian media is lying about it, because if they tell the truth, this is what the story is, that they will lose their ads, advertisements, commercials, which are, as in Pakistan, so is in India, it's government control. In Pakistan, it's not that much these days, but in India, the commercials and ads and all these things, which are government subsidized and paid, they are all under their control. So if the televisions do not toe the line of the government and present a clear, honest picture of what is happening in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they would lose their financial, clout, and so will their channel.
Absolutely.
So every single channel, and I'm one of those people who have been for the last 10 years appearing on Indian channels. I tell you, as soon as there is an anti-Pakistan element in the news or an issue in the news, it looks like as though somebody is pulling the strings of every single Indian channel.
Right.
And that means government is controlling it. Otherwise, it's not possible that in a country as huge as India, with 1.3 billion people, with hundreds of channels, that anybody can control the channels. So the controlling authority is the financial power, the power of the purse.
So over the last 6 years, this freedom of expression, the suppression that they're having in India, that you're referring to, and all the human rights violations against minorities and Indian occupied Kashmir, they've been recognized by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations, the US Congress, the European Union. And articles upon articles have been written, but at the same time, little or no action has been taken. Now, does it have to be like in the case of Myanmar, where thousands of people are killed, hundreds and thousands of people? Is that when the world actually responds to a crisis like this? Why can't it be prevented?
No. If you want my very honest answer, look, take a look at the issue of, Mr. Kulbhushan. That was a very clear case. The court did not come out very clear, neither in our favor nor against us. Rather, there was a little tilt towards India in their decision. So all I'm trying to say is that as long as Pakistan does not follow a very aggressive foreign policy, that means not only at the United Nations, not only at the world stage, not only at the international court, but also on the ground as demanded by Sayyid Gilani, the Hurriyat leader, in his letter to Prime Minister of Pakistan. If that does not happen, the Indian calculation has been and is that they will be able to curb the uprising of the Muslims in Kashmir, which is not in fact an uprising up until now. It is simply demonstrations and protests. The uprising means militancy in a way, with the help of weapons, with the help of military training, that those things are not happening. So the Indian calculation is that they will be able to drag this matter up to a point where the movement will get tired, will be sapped of its energy, will not be able to continue as effectively as it is being believed at the present time, or as it is happening at the present time. So the report by Rana Ayub and Dexter Filkins is so far correct, but because there is no external help, take the case of Palestinians. It's very simple. The whole world is behind them. The whole world is not behind Kashmir. We are still fighting that battle on the diplomatic stage. But Pakistan has to take a frontal role in this area.
Right.
If Pakistan does not do that, India will draw the conclusion that they can get away with their occupation, and the Indian freedom movement
Right.
being run by the Kashmiris.
So you
that
refer
may
to-
not bear fruit.
Right, you refer to the Palestinian issue now. The Israeli settlements in the Palestinian territories, now it's just gained legitimacy by the United States. However, now as you're seeing that the Indian Consul General, his recent remarks, Mr. Sandeep Chakravorty, the way he said that they're going to follow this Israeli model to build
Sure.
settlements, and within Indian occupied Kashmir, they also have a similar kind of a design, and at the same time, you have those pundits that they want to repatriate. Those same people don't want to be in enclosed, fenced-off communities. They want to integrate and live with the Kashmiris like they
Let me
did
be
before.
very honest one more time. You know, Crimea, for example, we are having very good relations. I don't want to say a lot of things about that issue of Crimea, but Crimea used to be a Tartar Muslim territory. Then times changed. They were during the communist rule, when it was Soviet Union, they were expelled into Central Asia, and that became a Russian territory by population, I mean. So the demographics are changed, have been changed in 20th century very fast and in very skillful manner. And those countries that are bigger, they can get away with their illegal acts. The reason is that many countries who have trade with them, like they have it with India, and many countries who don't feel Pakistan playing a major role. Pakistan is playing a very important role, but a major role in terms of some semi-military, or military assistance program or financial assistance programs. They see Pakistan sitting idle at the present time. I'm not saying that Pakistan is sitting idle, but this is the perception that is going on. So Pakistan has to provide some help to the freedom movement in Kashmir. Otherwise, 900,000 Indian soldiers vis-a-vis 9 million Kashmiris living under Indian occupation. Their demographics can be changed, will be changed, and I think the laws will be passed very soon. And one more thing, Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir has already been divided into two parts, Ladakh and the rest. So what we know is that two Hindu governors of these Muslim territories, which are now being run by India, which are now under Indian occupation, they where they are headed. So if they are being run by Hindu lieutenant governors, what's
Right.
going to happen
So
in the days ahead?
It could be a reality that the current 92% Muslim majority
That
in
could be
Indian
changed.
occupied Kashmir could drastically be changed. It could become Hindu majority with these
And
settlements.
as a matter of fact, at that time, if that happens, and when that happens, it could happen actually in the next 2 to 3 years. But you don't have to relocate the population of Kashmiris. You can bring in actually half the number, more than half the number from inside India.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So it can work both ways. Either you relocate the Kashmiris from Kashmir by tempting them into some other things that they may like, or you can bring in Hindu population from inside
What's
India.
the likelihood that the Kashmiris are going to actually be appeased by maybe greater economic prosperity
Look,
in the region like Prime Minister Modi is promising?
Here is the reality.
Then you just let the situation
There are
be.
certain nations who are warlike, like Afghans. They prefer death to dishonor, to a foreign occupation, to foreign hegemony. This is the psyche of the Afghan people. They would pick up arms and resist. In Kashmir, we are facing that situation, but it has to be helped, from neighboring countries like Pakistan, so that they can feel that if they start a struggle like the Afghans did against the American occupation, then they would have greater confidence. But if you don't have any assistance coming to them, they would draw the conclusion, how can we fight the massive might of Indian Army, which has about a mix of standing and regular and irregular forces of 900,000. This is the reality that's going to sink in, and they will be depressed because we are not fundamentally revolutionary people. Let me be very honest. So you have to assist them, encourage them that your struggle is not going to go in vain, as against these 900,000 Indian soldiers.
Absolutely.
So somebody has to put pressure on Indian occupation inside the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and that is Pakistan. And I hope Turkey and Malaysia can also join hands. But it is our battle. We have to fight it first before we ask others to join in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Tariq Pirzada, for your input in this program. Very interesting indeed. And now let's talk about how the Sri Lankan cricket team is here for a test match. And this is a great stride for Pakistan as far as combating terrorism in the country. This has been a problem, and it's been a problem for Pakistani cricket as well. So this has been a great victory for Pakistan and for our armed forces who have really fought against this menace of terrorism. Let's see a report about this.
Test cricket is returning to Pakistan after over a decade as the Sri Lankan team plays its World Test Championship matches in the country. The first test starts at Pindi Cricket Stadium, followed by a second and final test at National Stadium, Karachi from December 19. Fast bowler Suranga Lakmal has fallen ill and is replaced by Asita Fernando, who plays for Sri Lanka's under-23 and emerging team. Sri Lanka have also given former skipper Dinesh Chandimal a chance to fight his way back into the national team, now led by Vimut Karunaratne. Meanwhile, Fawad Alam was a surprise inclusion in Pakistan's 16-member squad announced on Saturday. The squad will be led by Azhar Ali. The tour of the Sri Lankan team highlights the impeccable safety and security measures adopted by Pakistan for visiting teams in light of concerns about the country being safe for sporting activities. An elaborate security plan has been laid out by the law enforcement agencies with over 4,500 security personnel deployed. In September, Sri Lanka's national cricket squad had arrived in Pakistan to play 3 one-day internationals and 3 T20 internationals. 10 senior players, citing security concerns, had opted out of that tour, but the Test squad that arrived is full strength.
So the resumption of Test cricket has begun in Pakistan again. We have with us online Ahmed Nawaz, who's our very own cricket host and commentator and expert, and our sports host. So thank you for joining us online, Ahmed.
Yes, Sharmeen.
So Ahmed, tell us about the Test cricket matches that are going on right now. How's Pakistan doing and how are the games going?
Well, first of all, Sharmeen, I think it's a historic moment for everybody, whether you're a sports fan or not, because the revival of Test cricket in Pakistan, any Test cricket that returns to a country, signals the resumption of proper cricket to Pakistan. Reason being is that we've had limited over matches then and there, but this is real cricket coming to Pakistan after 10 years. In Rawalpindi, it's coming after 15 years. And with the same team that was Sri Lanka that left off before 10 years when the unfortunate incident happened. But as far as the cricket is concerned, I think Pakistan is in a bother right now regarding that they didn't opt for a specialist spinner. And Sri Lanka seems to be having the upper edge on day one, I would say.
Right, great. Thank you so much for joining us online, Ahmed Nawaz, and giving us the updates on the Test cricket matches going on right now. Indeed, it has been a huge success for Pakistan to resume Test cricket in the country again. It shows the success of the Pakistani armed forces and our security forces in bringing down the problem of terrorism in Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Newsroom. That's all the time we have for today's program. And that's bye-bye from me, Sharmeen Ali, and from our team.